leads us into reports, right? The one thing our customers are always looking for, getting at information. The reports provide us data from our queries and tables, but they let us organize that in a nice readable format. Now, I was playing around with a report to put together this presentation. I was goofing around actually building a similar database to what I'm doing here. So we're gonna go back here to our database, and we're going to remain on our Create tab here, and we're going to start by creating a report. Now, unlike my queries, where I prefer to use my design first, with reports, I actually prefer to use the wizard to do the base layout, and then I'll play with it. So in this case, we're going to invoke our report wizard by clicking on it right here. Since I've got my sales query highlighted over here, it automatically brings that up in my table. If nothing's highlighted, it'll just give me the drop-down box. But I had it highlighted, so it's bringing it up automatically for me. And you'll see the only things we see in here are the fields that we've selected inside that query. Now, I could drop this down and change it and go after one of those tables if I wanted, but we're going to go ahead and build on our query that we used. What fields do I want here? Well, I want them all this time, but what I'm going to tell you is when you're designing a query for a reporting need, try and keep in mind that you may want to use that same query for other things, to do other reports or views, if you will, at a different time. So don't be afraid to add a few extra fields in there that you think might be pertinent, that could be useful down the road. It's not that we can't go back and add them later or create a new query, but why do the work twice? If you anticipate it, add a couple extra fields, because I don't have to use every one of these fields in my every report that I use this query to produce. But in this case, we're going to. So instead of selecting them one at a time, which I can do, and we can take them away, I'm going to say I want to move them all over. We're going to use all of those fields. That gets our process started. So we click Next, and now it asks us, hey, what kind of grouping would you like to do? Do I want to do any grouping? Well, maybe I do. Maybe I want to group by sales rep or maybe city. I don't know if I have. I know I got at least one duplicate on city. So we'll run with, you know what, we'll use sales rep. It makes more sense. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use sales rep as our grouping. So I select it, I click the little arrow, and I can add multiple groupings. So I could group below that as well. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward. So we're going to group by sales rep. If we were grouping by a date, let's say we're going after sales history and we started to group on date, you got a lot more flexibility as to how you want to do that, because within that you could choose to group monthly buckets, daily buckets, quarterly buckets, yearly buckets, and so on. It's kind of neat how you can actually start to lump things down. There are some grouping options, and this is an example of where we might do that. Now, we can group on letter in here. If this were a date, again, this is where I would see my quarterly, monthly, whatever, how you may want to group by a date. So we're good on this section, so we're going to click Next. So next it asks us, hey, what's your sorting order? And we can actually establish some summary information. So within that group, how do I want to sort? Do I want to sort by customer number, customer name, city? What do I want to sort on? Could be by sales. So we'll go ahead and we're going to go after it by, we'll go by city. Now, you know what? We're going to go by customer name. We also have the summary options down here. I'm going to pop that up because it's going to take any numeric values that we have and allow us to do stuff with them, such as summarize, average, go after min-maxes. I'm going to actually summarize it. And we can make a summary-only report here, which we're not going to do, but we can make this a summary-only report. So I don't see all the details underneath. It's just going to summarize by my grouping, which in this case would be by sales rep. I want details and summaries. And again, I can even calculate a percentage of total for each of those sums. So it'll tell me what percentage it represents of my total for the entire report and my total within a group and so on. But we're going to keep it simple. We're going to do a detail with some basic summary numbers, summarizing our sales by, for the current period. We're going to click OK. Again, I can do additional sorting options. I'm not going to. We're going to keep it fairly straightforward. Lastly here, it's going to ask us, actually almost lastly, what type of report do we want to do? I tend to use the step. There's different styles you can use, block reports, outline reports. Play with them, see what you prefer. I generally run step, and I generally run portrait. I'll let it go ahead and adjust my field values so that they all fit on the page. I'm going to click Next, and now we can actually name it and then preview it. So I'm only going to change query to report. So now we have our sales under report. Once I click Finish, it's going to go through, generate what we just asked it to generate. Because we have a prompt here, it's going to prompt us for something here. I'm going to go after $100,000 just to make sure we get plenty of data here. And what I end up with is a report. Is it perfect? No, it's not as readable as I'd like yet, but I've got my base from which to work. And you'll notice it's grouped on sales rep here for us. It's summarizing some data on sales rep. And in some cases, like Margaret Rockwell, where she's got multiple customers, it's put them in order by customer, just like we requested. It's given us their sales and all of that. So we now have a report to play with. I'm going to click the Close button so we get out of our preview mode, and it should automatically put us into our edit mode so we can start to play with things and change things around and make this report what we want it to be.